Hello, friends. This is Brian Peart, and it's with a heavy heart that I'm here today. This wasn't my plan. Today is a gorgeous day outside in Georgia. It's February 28th. It's 70 degrees and sunny, not a cloud in the sky, and I had plans to hang out at the park and just enjoy my day in the sun. But I woke up to my mom texting me about the attack on Iran by the U.S. and Israel. And my heart just got heavy. And I went downstairs to do my morning quiet time, and I end up on my knees asking God what I'm supposed to do about this. What do you want me to do next? And the outline that I'm about to share with you kind of just laid out while I was on my knees. So this attack, I believe, that just happened sets up the end times. And so I'm here to kind of explain that. And as I do, a quick caveat. There's 1,000 people who have end times ideas, and all of us may have a tweak or something different or whatever. There's people that'll think of pre-trib and post-trib, of raptures and things like that. We're all on the same team. I'm not here to try to divide anything. I'm just here sharing what I think God has shared with me, and I'm trying to just show one possible scenario that I see playing out more and more likely. And I've been watching this since 2022, and it's just playing out as if it was scripted. And so with all of that said, let's go. About a month ago, I did a video called Buckle Up, Jesus is Coming Soon. And in it, I describe what I was shown in prayer and fasting about the end times. And I'm going to recap it now. To get the full version, go back and watch that video. It's called, again, Buckle Up, Jesus is Coming Soon. But here's a quick recap, okay? Back in 2018, 2020, somewhere in there, I was studying the scriptures. Every morning for 20 years, I wake up and I study the scriptures. And I was reading 2 Peter, where it said, 2 days is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day to the Lord. And God impressed on my heart at that time that 2 days was 2,000 years. 2 days in the grave, 2,000 years. 1 day risen, 1,000 years. And I knew from my time studying Revelation that the Lord sets up a millennial reign at the end of the time. So that was the third day, the 1,000 years. So 2 days from his crucifixion, which most people put at 33 AD, is 2033. 33 AD plus 2,000 years is 2033 right here. Taking that back 7 years, because the tribulation period is a 7-year period, you get 2026, okay? And so God kind of showed me that. And then separately, over the next few years, I saw something different. And when Putin attacked Ukraine on February 24th of 2022, I came out and with a podcast. I was doing a podcast at the time. I called it the Nonprofit Prophecy. And I felt like that was the beginning of World War III, okay? And so what's interesting is, and I'm going to go through this quickly, February 24th of 2022, if you add those numbers, 2/24, 2022, it comes to 68. 6 is the number of man. 8 is the number of infinity or God. So it's man before God, okay? That's a Satan trick. He wants us focused on ourselves, all right? The same with the first day of World War II. It adds up to 68, and the first day of World War I. If you add those numbers together, the first World War was 4, the second was 6, the third one was going to be 8. Because of this, because I was shown this, I felt like Putin attacking Ukraine was the start of the war in 2022, and 8 years later, in 2030, it would end, okay? Now against this backdrop, okay? Now, I know people are going to say, no one knows the day or the hour, and I don't know the day or the hour, but it doesn't say we won't know the year. In fact, right before Jesus says no one knows the day or the hour, he says, when you see the twigs starting to shoot, you're going to know that summer is near. Be on the watch because the time is near. The time is near. We can see that now. So, against this backdrop, let's look at what just happened with this attack on Iran. Because Israel was involved, because the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran, this brings it into a spiritual situation very end times type stuff. If it was just U.S. bombing Iran, I would think a little differently. But because it was the U.S. in Israel, I believe it is an end times, a very clear end times point. And so we're supposed to look at things with wisdom and with spiritual eyes, okay? Trump openly says he's trying to get a regime change, okay? There's been a lot of murder of Christians and stuff by this regime, so that most Americans would support, okay? However, and most people think it's going to be quick, and it may be, and I hope it is, much like Venezuela was, but I don't think so. Okay, back in 2022, when Putin attacked Ukraine, everyone thought it would be over in 6 weeks because they would sanction Putin. He couldn't survive with the sanctions, and it would be over quickly. I said no. I came out with that podcast, said no, it's going to last 8 years, and here we are 4 years later, and it's still going on. I think the same thing here. I think Russia, China, and Iran Russia and China will support Iran. It won't be so easy to topple that regime because they're going to support. How do I know this? Back in 2022, I said Russia and China and Iran would team up. Last week, Russia, China, and Iran were running military exercises in the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, we're watching this happen, and then now today we get the bombing of Iran. So let's put our critical thinking caps on. How does this end? How does this end? One way to end is the U.S. wins. We do take out China. We do take out the regime, and we completely defeat Iran and put in a new regime. Okay, that is one thing that could happen, and it could. Okay, like I said, I don't think it will. I hope it's quick, and I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think it will. Another thing is, Russia, China, and Iran could team up and try to attack the U.S. I don't think that's a likely scenario at this time too. But there's a third thing that might happen that would play into the end times perfectly, okay? Back in I forgot to mention something. Back in Daniel describes a 7-year timeline, okay? He says that at the midpoint of the tribulation period, he talks about it in Daniel 9, verse 27, where he says, he, the Antichrist, will affirm a covenant with many. He's going to create some sort of treaty or a covenant. He's going to start it in 2026. Well, he starts it, and then at the midpoint, he breaks that treaty, and then the final 3.5 years. We know it's 3.5 years on each side of it because in Daniel 12, he says, from the time of the abomination of desolation, which is at the midpoint to the end, is 1,290 days, which is 3.5 years. And so from the midpoint to the end is 3.5 years. Then from the beginning to the midpoint is 3.5 years. So 2026, 3.5 years. If it starts in July, August, somewhere in there, 3.5 years would take it to 2030. Then 3.5 years would take it to 2033. Because of all that, there is a third likely scenario that could play out, and that's the war keeps going. This battle between Iran and the U.S. happens for a few more months, and then the nations that are around Israel, the Muslim nations, because this is an attack on a Muslim country, right? So the Muslim nations around Israel create a treaty that allows Israel to rebuild the temple. That if they did do a treaty and they reaffirmed, let's say, Trump's Board of Peace, that would be a good reason for Trump to pull out and no longer attack Iran. It would play very well into this end time scenario. Trump could declare victory and call off the fighting with Iran. Meanwhile, we know that that's not a real treaty, that at the midpoint, the Antichrist is going to violate that treaty, okay? Who could that Antichrist be? Whoever does this treaty, whoever gets these 10 Muslim nations to gather together, I believe is going to be the Antichrist. Erdogan of Turkey, that's one of the nations, actually, when you go to the Greek number for each of his letters in his name, it adds up to 666. It's just an interesting little side note. Doesn't mean he is the one, but you never know, okay? Now, if that treaty is done, we pull out, but I don't think that's the end of it, because I think the world doesn't see Trump the way we see America. They don't see America the way we see America. We have to step out of our algorithms, okay? When you're a right-wing person, you're getting fed your right-wing algorithms. If you're a left-winger, you're getting fed your left-wingers. Overall, in general, we Americans see ourselves as the good guys and everyone else as the bad guy. So Putin is a bad guy, Iran is a bad guy, Xi is a bad guy, everyone's a bad guy if they're not American. But the rest of the world, I don't think looks at it that way, okay? The rest of the world, this is what they're seeing. And this isn't, just think about what they're seeing. They're seeing in America and a president that is, and I'm not anti-Trump, okay? I voted for him. I'm not bashing Trump or anything like that. I'm just saying this is what the world is seeing by what's actually happening. He's utilizing economic tools like tariffs to control and try to control other economies. He has attacked Venezuela and conquered it. He's now attacked China. He's talked about capitalizing Greenland. People around the world, especially our enemies of Russia, China, and Iran, don't see America as the good guys. They see us as the guys actually instigating this war. They see us as the enemy, as the one that has to be stopped. And from their angle, they don't see Trump stopping for any reason. And so they are going to team up and attack America. I think that'll happen no later than 9/11, the 25-year anniversary of 9/11. So somewhere in July, August, I think the treaty gets formed, we pull out, and then somewhere shortly after that, I think there's an attack on America. Now you may say we're too strong, no one would dare do that, but you have to understand we can be attacked without a single bomb being dropped, okay? It'll start economically. The world will team up and dump our bonds, which will crash our economy. Once the economy crashes, what's going to happen? The Democrats are going to blame the Republicans, and the Republicans are going to blame the Democrats, and the Civil War is going to start. So now we're fighting hard against each other. When a nation's fighting hard against each other, they're easier to be attacked, okay? At the same time, there could be an EMP that knocks out the electric grid for a good portion of our country. China is one of the main landholders of farmland in America. They've been quietly buying up farmland for 20 years. They also are the #1 makers of fentanyl. They could very easily poison our food supply, okay? At the same time, they could also set out a virus like we had with what was it called? COVID. That could happen. There are military cells already set up in our country. Back in 2022, when the people were flooding through the southern borders and under Biden, we were letting lots of people in. It wasn't all poor Mexican families, okay? I was on the phone. This isn't something that is from CNN or anything. I was on the phone with someone I was doing a loan for outside of Detroit in a small town near Lake Michigan. And as we were talking, he says, "Brian, you can't believe what I just saw yesterday." He said, yesterday into our town came 4 buses, and out of the 4 buses came 100 military-aged Chinese men and brought into our town. Now, they were carted up there in buses that we provided. So our government was actively moving people, our enemies, into key strategic central cities. 2 weeks later, my assistant Mary, who's from Chicago, said one of her friends saw the similar thing outside of Chicago. So there's cells already in place, and we attacked a Muslim country, Iran. There's already a lot of Muslims already here. Everything's in place. So when you combine all of this, us fighting a civil war, EMPs, the electric grid going down, the economy crashing, the poisoning of the food supply, the viruses, and you put it all together, okay? Trump will have to try to control it by executing martial law, okay? That's if this happens, that's the next thing that's going to happen. He has to do that, and he's going to try to control it. What does that mean? There's not going to be a midterm election. If that happens, there won't be a midterm election because we'll be under martial law. And we probably won't have a 2028 election because by 2030, America will be defeated. Okay, this war ends in 2030. America is nowhere in the tribulation timeline that you see in Revelation unless we're Babylon, and Babylon does fall. So either way, I believe by 2030, America is no longer a world superpower. Doesn't mean we're completely wiped off the face of the earth. Rome fell, and you could still go to Rome right now, but it does mean we are no longer the guys that are in control. And with us out of the way, then by 2030, then the Antichrist can violate his treaty, because now there's not us to defend Israel, and he could set up the abomination that causes desolation, and everything else that's in tribulation can then happen shortly thereafter. Man, that's a lot, and I hope I'm wrong. Okay, I really do. I don't want to be right. If I'm right, though, think about it. This summer might be the last summers of vacations before, we get attacked and martial law, okay? Who wants to think about stuff like that, But my purpose isn't to scare. My purpose is to prepare, okay? The Bible tells us, Jesus actually tells us what to do during these times, how to live. In Revelation chapters 2 and 3, they're all red letters. They're the last red letters, the last words of Jesus in the Bible, okay? I wrote a book about it last year that got published last year called The Last Instructions of Jesus Before He Comes Again, okay? He very clearly writes in those letters how the end time church should be living, and this book really lays it out for you. I encourage you to get it. Matthew 24 and 25 also is something you can read, where Jesus, in his end times discourse, okay, in Matthew 24 and 25, he describes his disciples come to him, and they ask him what's going to be like in the end times, and Jesus tells them. And fully half of Matthew 24 and 25 is 3 parables where he tells us how we should be living, okay? He says we should be watchful. Watch these things that are happening. Don't be deceived. We're supposed to be ready, and we're supposed to be working. We're supposed to be doing what we're supposed to be doing. And the work of a disciple, okay, is love God, love others, okay, and then go and make disciples. That's what we're supposed to be doing. John 8, verse 31 and 32 says this: if you abide in my word, you are my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. This time that's coming is going to be the greatest evangelical time in history, okay? People are going to be running around scared. They're going to be crying out, where is truth? Where is truth? Where can truth be found? Us Christians, if we're reading our Bibles, if we're focusing on our relationship with Jesus, we're going to be there with the answer, and we're going to help these people, and who knows how many people we might be able to lead to the Lord in that time, okay? We have the truth. We can be a source of encouragement. We must spend time in this word, and I know some people say, I don't have to worry about that. We're going to get raptured up. And I've addressed that both in this book and also on the last, the Buckle Up with Jesus video. I address it, and I'm not going to go there today, okay? Hope you're right. Hope we all just scoot up. And if I'm right about 2026, and you're a couple months away from scooting on up there, okay? However, if these things begin to happen and you don't get raptured up, maybe, just maybe, you were taught incorrectly, and you might want to go back to this word and study it again because it's coming. But either way, the time is short, okay? And we need to get ready. And there's really no downside to getting ready. What if I'm wrong and it doesn't happen for 100 years? Hey, if you're getting your relationship with Jesus right, and you're studying the scripture, and you're doing what Jesus tells us to do in his last words, you're growing your faith, you're in a good place, and you're getting rewards that are going to echo through all eternity at the Bema seat, okay? So it's time to get serious about our relationship with Jesus Christ. We're supposed to get serious about the great commandment, loving God, focus on him, and then love others. And serious about the Great Commission, reaching people and making disciples. And again, I hope I'm wrong. We'll know soon enough. If nothing happens by the end of 2026, I was wrong. And I'll be the first one to say, hey, I'm glad, you know. But if I'm right, the time is very short. And like I said, most people who believe the end times, who study the end times, believe it's soon, okay? We all have different theories maybe, but they all think it's true. Everyone believes it's soon. So let's get ready. Let's get focused on Jesus. Let's get focused on this word. Let's study it, and let's get ready, and let's be watchful of these things that are taking place over there and see what's to come. But be ready, man, because serious things are about to happen, okay? I love you, and just remember, Jesus loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it.